Hello there, General Kenobi.
Welcome, everyone.
You are a bold one.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Podcast number 129.
Oh,
yes,
boy.
indeed.
Hey. Yes, exactly. Yachi26.
That's right.
Man. Hunter Bit. Eric Wald, welcome. Fentelez, Noob, Hire, Ransun, Ohio, Sakai, good morning, wow.
Black Mamba.
Oh my god. Ameju, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub for 9 months.
Wow.
Appreciate it. My govern. Oh my god. All right. Hey, we got some first timers here to the streams. Awesome.
Welcome.
Butani, welcome. The Barks 99.8. All right. Hype indeed.
Yep. That is
Hey,
definitely
Touchy
important
Gamer.
for Final Fights. Oh, yeah.
Yes, we'll be talking a lot in terms of Final Fights. So we'll give you all a little bit of a heads up regarding what series, show, movie, what have you we'll be discussing when we go into that. But a lot of them, we are going to be talking less about the actual results of the fight or the fight itself, but kind of what it means in a story to have that final conflict resolution via some a wonderful display of your characters just clashing.
More of the
in
narrative
opposition.
weight of the fight itself and maybe the build up to it and everything.
Yep.
Rather than the details of the spectacle.
Right, because in a lot of cases, there is going to be some kind of final conflict. Just no matter what story you're doing.
Sure.
Even if there's a romance, it's, oh my god, they finally confess and
the conflict
all
comes
works
to a
out.
climax and then there you go, you know?
But we're going to be talking specifically about the battles that either happen via the forces of, physical contest or what have you, like in a sports anime or in a, a clash of just punching out each other or what have you in, something like, Bacano or something.
Or Ippo.
Ippo, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, y'all.
Yeah.
Ippo's good. But we don't want to talk
Stop
about
the
that
presses,
here. We're gonna
right?
stop talking there.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Before we get too far into this, we've got to give a shout out to one of our newest VIPs on Patreon, Monte Cristo. I cannot
Monte Cristo.
I cannot help but notice that when I put Gankutsuo on a poll,
You have someone join VIP.
someone joined VIP named Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
So, you're awesome, Monte Cristo. Thank you so much for the support. Means a lot, and hoping to see you more often on the Discord.
Indeed.
All right. Will you also be talking about the climax of the arcs? Behanort, that is a good question. In some ways, yes.
Right.
But not going so far in detail.
Yeah, not that meta about it. Because, because the whole point of Final Fights is that they are the climax of the arc that results in a fight, right? Because there might be fights along the way.
Yes.
But the final fight, what makes that so special is that it is at that end point. It's that exclamation mark. Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that will be discussed quite a bit is that there are a lot of conflicts that resolve and then have story continuing after that.
Sure.
A lot of the ones that we're going to be discussing here either are bookends of a specific character's arc, usually the protagonist that's involved in this final battle. But there is a lot that it means that happens kind of after this, but you have to assume we are getting only a little bit of the results of that on screen or in the medium that it's distributed in.
We see most of the conflict and then we see things of, okay, this is about how it ends off, but, we don't actually see it completely unfold in some super long epilogue necessarily.
Right, exactly. In the main one that I'm going to be discussing here that is kind of the most different with regards to this, it is from a book series, so it's one where there is quite a lot actually that happens post the final battle.
Even in the movies.
Even in the movies, that's very true. Yes, you can see JoJo in this discussion. Yes, JoJo is going to be brought up for sure.
And by the way, if something isn't mentioned in here, that doesn't mean that we don't think that the final battle is worth mentioning.
Right.
What we're more focusing on is the narrative build up in the what it means in the story as a whole and the finality of it specifically, right? Because there are lots of amazing fights in storytelling and anime specifically.
Anime is great for this.
Oh yeah.
In fact, this discussion is one that really works best in anime as a medium, because I would say that you want to see the art. You want to see the colors literally clash against each other. You want to see your characters that might have met in little sparks and moments before this have that big moment where they're staring each other down, and the dream of one and the ideals of the other, the motivations just completely clashing in this over dramatized, visual aspect of it. It makes the whole thing just stand out in your memory as being like, oh, that moment was special.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic thing. And I gotta say, a lot of times the final battles are like standout moments because the rest of the story isn't even that great necessarily. There are a lot of times where I've seen the fight because I kind of know like the wiki version of the story that brought them there.
Sure.
But the actual display of the emotion, all the aspects of the presentation of it, tell almost a better, simpler story than the build-up that went to get to this point.
Sure. Or maybe in the case of Bleach, stuff that happens after.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So which one do you want to talk about first?
So I think the one that we both know that we're going to talk about, the one that is probably the most special to both of us,
and sort of like the, oh really, you're
like,
gonna bring this
oh
one
you're
up?
gonna bring this one up, what a surprise. Yeah, so this is the final battle in Avatar The Last Airbender between Zuko and Azula.
Specifically that one, not the battle between Aang versus Ozai.
Exactly.
That one is also really good, but there are certain elements of the final Agni Kai that end up feeling final in ways that the battle between the Avatar and the Fire Lord never could. Right? It just couldn't, right? It's almost too epic, that battle. Whereas this one,
this means so much more than just it being the clash of a beautiful display of animation, sad music, siblings, rivalry, the character development of two characters as one ascends and the other descends, as one is reformed and built up and another crumbles into dust. Right. This is the quintessential, I would say, rivalry fight that for us needs to be mentioned here.
Well, and the thing is, because one of the things that I want to have whenever there's a final fight is I want there to be hype and regret. And I want there to be both of those things. You can have an amazing fight with just one of those things, and a lot of fights do that because they really nail the hype or they nail the regret or something. But in this fight in particular, I feel like it nails the hype and regret so well because there's the rivalry aspect, right? They were always, they were always butting heads with each other. They were always competing, all of that stuff. But then there's the fact that they're family. They're family, and that all of this could be traced back to a broken family. And that's basically all it is, right? And that it didn't have to turn out this way for either of them. But this is how it is. And now it needs to happen.
Right. This is a fight that was properly foreshadowed since the beginning of the show. There was an idea put in Zuko's character rather early on in the Southern Air Temple, episode 3, that there was a time when he dueled. And there was a master that he dueled against. And that moment scarred him for life.
Physically and emotionally, mentally, and everything.
Now, Zuko goes on probably one of the best character development journeys for any kids show ever. And, you can put it up there with other shows in general, but there's a lot of good television out there. The point is that we are invested in Zuko's side of things, and we see the foreshadowing built up for it from early on. We even meet Azula before we meet Azula in the Blue Spirit episodes. She's looking on with glee as her father burns Zuko.
And with Zuko's, and one of the things that I think is really important here is that Zuko's entire character arc has been one of internal struggle. There's the environment that he struggles against, but really it's an internal struggle.
Really.
And one of the things that was so great about when they did the original duel with Zhao back in Southern Air Temple is that we get to see that basically this fight in a lot of ways was more meaningful than any of his fights with Aang, right? This was where we're like, okay, yeah, this is where he became the protagonist for us, right? Because we got to see his story.
Right. Sorry, you're right. It's not Blue Spirit. It's the Storm episode. My bad.
Yeah.
But yeah. So with Zuko, we end up. Sorry, go ahead.
So the fact that it's something where the capitulation of his arc, because there's the capitulation of his growth as a person with Iroh, right? Yeah. When he comes back to Iroh, and that's great. And yes, there's the fact of him, saving Katara at the end. But the fact that his final moment is in a battle against someone from the Fire Nation, someone from his own family, it's like that perfect culmination of this is part of his battle against himself, right? Of his that fiery aspect of himself that became something twisted.
Right. That was the thing I was going to bring up with the proper foreshadowing. Is I would say you need 4 key things. I would say there's a bunch of like extra things you need with this, but you need basically a reason for the forces that oppose each other to meet. There's some different motivations, beliefs, ideals, or what have you. You need proper foreshadowing for this final fight. You need to see versions of this battle or conflict play out beforehand. You need investment on both sides for it to be a proper one. This is for like a good one here. And the other one is you really need high stakes. And the high stakes is really where a lot of the hype and regret stuff that you were coming about, I would say, kind of built into it. If there's no stakes behind this, like the stakes aren't really high, you know not only how it's going to end, but you know that the consequences of that ending are going to be one where it's like, in a week it'll be fine. You won't really remember this anyway, because usually in the mediums that they distribute these, you don't actually see a lot after the final battle because it's the final battle.
Right. Like with Zuko and Azula, we saw them fight before. Throughout season 2, they fought several times, right? But but the thing is that because it was just a fight, right? It was important, but this is where it's like, no, it all goes down here. Both of them are at the end of their character arcs, and then they meet, and we know that this is where it all goes down.
Right.
Only one of them is going to truly walk away from this.
Well, only one of them can be Fire Lord after this. It's quite literally that. The stuff you were bringing up with Iroh was the one I wanted to bring up with the proper foreshadowing here, is that throughout the show, and specifically in season 2, you start to see that Zuko is the one that had to struggle. He had the one that had to work for this. Azula was the one who had the raw talent. She was the prodigy. She was the favorite. There are so many things about them that were diametrically opposed before we even realized that they both actually hate each other. Like, they actually hate each other's guts. Like, it gets really dark and twisted as well, but they hate each other.
And on a deeper level than just, I can't stand this person. Like, there's something about them that reminds them of certain aspects of themselves. That
the big one for Zuko, though, and the reason why we're invested in both angles of this here, is that Azula literally represents the dark aspect of the Fire Nation that is present with him, that is in conflict with Iroh, that is the positive aspect of the Fire Nation within him. And they are literally represented in the second season as dragons combating over his soul when he goes through the battle before it even happens later. And then when the final battle actually happens, he has a decision that he makes that is kind of the representation of him taking in, accepting the consequences of the blue dragon, and then actually overcoming it.
Like just the visual narrative of him redirecting the lightning and what that means for him as a person, of accepting that aspect of where he came from, bringing it into himself, and then letting go. Like, that's huge. And the fact that since his arc is one about realizing what it is he really wants, who he really is and all that, the fact that he sees that realized in its darkest form in Azula for the final fight just makes it that much more impactful.
For sure.
And that she also is getting the thing that she always wanted. But the thing is that she only realizes now that it isn't actually enough for her, but even then she's not ready to fully admit it and be humble about it, and that's why he ends up beating her. Like, it's just
Yeah, this is probably the one that we'll gush about the most in this entire podcast discussion here. And yeah, Avatar's not an anime. Cool. We're gonna hurt your thing with this. Well, we're gonna be discussing mostly anime on this one here, but we're gonna be discussing a book / live action adaptation in a second here as well. So
yes, indeed.
There's going to be anime discussion here. Moving to the next one here, and I think this is kind of the full. That's wow. I don't just spoil it there. The Avatar: The Last Airbender of anime, and that's Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yeah.
And I want to say that with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, there's kind of two final battles here. But you're not actually necessarily certain as to, like, which one each of them are.
Right.
So the main one that everyone kind of is certain about is when it's literally the power of everyone coming together to defeat the final big bad. Right. It's wonderful. There's a lot of moments that are exciting, and you get to see every character kind of be, for the most part, relevant and useful in bringing about the end of this evil Dark Lord, ancient evil, what have you. It fits all the bills of what FMAB was going to be. But we're going to bring up also that there was another conflict that was going on here
in many ways
the entire story,
with a similar situation to the Zuko versus Azula and the Aang versus Ozai, right? Because the final battle with the true big bad, that's the Aang versus Ozai, right?
Right.
But then there's the Mustang versus Envy.
Oh, okay. That's not what I was going to talk about.
You weren't talking about?
No, that's not. That's not the final battle. Wait. No. I'm talking about the actual conquering of alchemy, the conquering of the whole problem.
Oh, great way to bring that up, because I was like, how do you bring that up without actually going into just it's the mechanics of the fight? No, because that is the
whole conflict of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and this is probably one of my favorite things about for the most part, a battle shonen, is having the final conflict be one that was a puzzle. Right, it was a difficult path that needed to be taken between two brothers. That one needed to basically sacrifice himself in order to provide the moment by which the other brother could then actually defeat the big bad evil guy,
Right.
Oh no, our D&D boss all along was my father's cloned dark transformative essence being thing. Okay, that's all really epic and stuff, and that creates a lot of good opportunities for that visual clash and what have you.
Yep.
But the actual ending final battle was Truth and Ed, just talking.
Right. And one of the things that's so great about this is, in a similar way to the Zuko versus Azula situation, you have something where both the villain and the protagonist are posed the same issue, and they resolve it in different ways. And the hero resolves it the right way, and the villain doesn't. The villain, and it's not even that they don't, it's that they're stubborn. They know what the answer is, but they refuse to accept it. So it's a personal problem with themselves of them not growing. Which is just like the best way to do it. And then because of that, the chips fall where they may. And also, but it has the foreshadowing.
It has the foreshadowing from the very beginning of the show that the only thing that's going to overcome the truth, the only thing that's going to bend the laws of this whole world, is the actual acts and sacrifice of people that care about others. Those actual things are what's going to save, a helpless little girl. Those are the things that we actually had set up from the very beginning of the show that would be necessary in order for the full final conflict to be resolved.
Because when it comes right down to it, as wonderful as the spectacle of battles can be, that's not why we care about battles, right? I mean, okay, it can be, and that can be great from the popcorn angle, right? But for the things that take it to the next level and go that step beyond and stick in our minds afterwards, it's where it's the battle is simply the representation of what's going on the inside. Right, that both of them have, say, conflicting ideals or something, and as a result of that, they must do battle, right? And in this situation here, even though Ed and Homunculus are not directly actually doing battle, it's their separate interactions with Truth. They are. It is the manifestation of all of their beliefs about existence in the world and themselves and how they fit into it that come on display here, and then figure out why one of them is no good.
I really liked this ending because there were so many aspects of the idea that Al did his exchange in order to give Ed back his arm, that I was like, oh, okay, that's actually a really clever way to do this there. But Ed can't necessarily just undo anything like that. So he needs to actually have something really good in order to save this here. And I'm like freaking out watching this show for the first time about all kinds of Deus Ex Machinas and stuff like that. And God, the fact that it ended up being something this integral to the beginning basic building blocks of the show that they kind of went over a few times in the first kind of arc of the series, which in retrospect, if you've watched FMA, you kind of realize why they kept specific things about the intro kind of beginning part of the story
and not
and why a lot
others.
of other stuff, because they're like, these are thematically extremely important.
We need to make sure that this definitely makes it through, even though there was stuff that was cut that was like unfortunate because it was still really good.
Right. Sorry. Yes, you're right, Bayanor. I'm sorry. There was a bits message. Here it is. Bayanor with the 100 bits. I'm kind of sad you're only 1/3 of the way through One Piece. Because there's still so much more you could discuss on that topic. Anyway, what about Lord of the Rings? That sure has a great climax. Great minds think alike. Lord of the Rings
next on the list.
Is next on the list. So there you go. All right.
Yep.
Let's segue here. Another very good story with a fantasy, dramatic, everyone comes together for the final battle bit, where actually, again, the final battle is not all of the forces of good and men and elves and dwarves at the Black Gate.
It's not about which side has more soldiers and whatnot. No. It's about the journey.
It's the twist that, no, when you come all the way to the final moment of your journey, there is going to be a decision that's made, and you might have resolved to do it a certain way 100 times. But when it comes down to it, maybe the journey took a much longer, much heavier toll on you than you think it did. Maybe, the war wasn't all along over some piece of jewelry here that had the representation of all that is evil contained within it. No, it's just that
something in here.
Yeah, I lost a little bit of me along the way.
Right.
There are so many stories that do this really well, like really well.
Oh yeah.
But Lord of the Rings, with the way it captures in the final moments that Frodo struggles in this last little bit. No, Gollum's there too. Like, we have to deal with that as well.
Well, and again, that's just the Zuko and Azula, the Ed versus Homunculus. That's just the example of where Frodo would be if he lost, right? That's what he's fighting for, essentially. Gollum didn't make the right choice. He started to, right? And we were cheering for him. But in the end, no. And Frodo, he almost got there. He was doing it. And then, no, he wasn't able to make the decision. He lost.
Yep.
But luckily, he wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where if you're going to have a final battle of sorts and have it be an internal one, one of the things that you have to then, kind of deal with here, because of the four things we mentioned, the opposing force and the investment on both sides don't necessarily apply here unless you're literally willing to split your character and break them a little bit at that final moment.
Sure.
If it's going to be an internal one, there are a lot of stories where, it comes down to, you're a good person, don't kill them. Don't actually end it this way. There's maybe a specific anime you can think about the way I'm not mentioning this here, because this one I don't want to spoil anyone on.
Yeah.
But they don't have to fall into darkness in order to solve the great evil or what have you.
Right.
There's, some other way that this can be done here. But the fact that you made this journey is its own reward, but there's still the consequences of you suffered through this journey. You went through this whole thing, and the stakes are so high that it doesn't matter whether or not you win the final battle. You've already lost so much along the way to get here. And it's in the final battle that you realize how much was suffered along the way there. And I would say that Lord of the Rings does a stellar example of doing that.
And the thing that I think is so important to draw attention to about this is that so Lord of the Rings, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's defined the whole idea of epic fantasy in our day and age, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that I often seen used from Lord of the Rings is the epic battles, the elves, the orcs, the dwarves, the forces of good and evil and all that stuff.
Because the Battle of Pelennor Fields, that's some good stuff right there.
Yeah, like that's cream of the crop, like top shelf stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
But very often people will forget about the tale of the hobbits, right? Of the everyman that has to be called up, or that is called up to a higher purpose and then has to answer that calling. Or not. But they decide to.
Yeah.
And then it gets real tough, right?
Yeah, it is not easy.
It's not easy. It's not fun. It's not grand and glorious, right? As amazing as Theoden's death charge is, the hobbits are not partaking in that. Well, okay, one is, but that's besides the point. That it's the matter of the heart that's what's really important, right? That decision to stand up against evil and all that's what wins the day,
right? Not
massive charges and everything. And I feel like that really needs to be drawn attention to, because all the other stuff surrounding it is so good and so just awesome, that it's easy to forget the little things.
Yeah, and I would say that this is probably the reason why I put High Stakes as the fourth one there, because I think it's the one that people forget the most. And we've seen it in movies, but I don't really care about one CGI duplicated horde of things against another CGI duplicated horde of things hitting each other really hard.
The high stakes are the personal stakes. Yeah. Now, you can have the epic high stakes and stuff too. Yep. That's great to have. But when it comes right down to it, you want that and the personal.
Exactly. Yeah. One is there for the presentation. The other is there to actually get you invested in the actual conflict itself. We got a bunch of follows that I actually didn't mention either, so let me do all those really quick. Nolent, Zelzal88, Hunter Bitch, Guts Mura, Infinite Ghost 88, Ronsun 32, Manjeet 28. Thank you all so much for the follows. Yes. And Ian Waffles, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. That's actually funny because I'm like, Ian Waffles, wait a minute. I'm like, I know you? like, hold on. Okay. I want to shift focus a little bit and talk about a combination of things. One of the things Jacob and I independently wanted to make sure we brought up here, and that is a style of final battles.
Yeah.
One that is more actually about the presentation. One that is more about the I would say the culmination of one conflict and then how it changes focus.
Right.
When you get into the actual act of it. So how about you kick this one off?
So basically every Studio Trigger final battle ever.
Yes.
Now one of the things that's tough about this, because we were both thinking of this independently, we didn't actually realize that the other person would pick this. And when I was thinking about it, I don't know about you, but because we were wanting to go for not just which one had the coolest execution, right? Because that's tough to get into and it's constantly changing and whatnot.
Yep.
But Trigger isn't necessarily what I think a lot of people would think of as far as the narrative meaning and build up and everything behind the final battle.
Sure.
But it really nails it really well.
Yeah.
Even though it has the token things of constantly escalating and at some point they got to go to space. And
it's a Deus Ex Machina.
Right. It's a Deus Ex Machina. Oh my God. Right.
Go watch Promare if you haven't yet.
Go watch Promare.
Oh wait, no, we can't. We're all in. So,
yes.
Find a way to watch Promare if you can.
Yes. Yeah. When it ends up coming out on Blu-ray, go get it. Yeah. But it's something where the build up to it is really incredible. Really incredible. Like whether you're talking about Gurren Lagann and there's all the journeys that all of the characters have gone on that kind of put them into that situation in sort of a power of friendship way to, maybe we can have this chance, and the way that the characters have to think about themselves and what they're really about and how far they've come and the sacrifices and the losses along the way and everything, and what will they really stand for? And of course it's Trigger, right? So it's not done in a very how should we say technical way. Sure. It's more of just the emotion of the conflict itself, right? But it's dialed up to such wonderful levels, not just with the visuals but with everything surrounding it, that they're some of the most climactic fights I've ever seen.
Yep.
Like what would be, so if you had to pick,
Mhm.
what would be your favorite and why? Like
Of the trigger endings?
Yeah, of the trigger endings.
Well, I would say one of the things that's really tough to quantify about them, I'm just gonna go out there and
Mhm.
say that it's easier to attach myself to either Gurren Lagann or Kill la Kill than Premiere because Premiere is recent,
Sure.
and I would say that
And it's shorter, so you have less
so you have
time.
less build up to it. But I would say that one of the things that was handled really well in Kill la Kill specifically
Mhm.
is that the villain and the opposing force, if you will, between the two sides
Yeah.
was one that I would say, something that was properly established from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And while both Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, I won't spoil it too much, they do an about face at some point in the middle-esque part of the show where the conflict changes dramatically. Thematically, both of them are consistent all the way out.
It's just sort of what that conflict looks like. You get a better understanding of it. Yeah.
I would say that the investment is where they have the bit of the difference here because of the villains in Kill la Kill. And that is that on both sides, you care so much about these characters here, and because it is in some ways less climactic than Gurren Lagann's ending, it feels far more personal, and you know that everything's going to be Daijobu probably, but but not everything has to go exactly the way that a happy ending kind of leaves itself to.
Which is also something Trigger likes to do.
However, I would say Gurren Lagann takes a little bit of the cake with regards to its high stakes area side of things, in that Gurren Lagann gets so ridiculous, so over the top, so bombastic, in that in some ways that we're gonna have a little bit of a happy ending here, that everything's gonna go well. But when things are over, I feel like that's where Gurren Lagann kind of shows you the effect of this whole journey and what it kind of meant for our characters a little bit better.
Yeah,
I can't really choose either one, but I'd say they each have very clear differences in their strengths there.
Well, and it's tough for me because originally I was pretty set, and I was like, yeah, it's Kill la Kill. Like that's my favorite. But then when you were talking about it, I remembered the end credits scene of Gurren Lagann. And I would say that because now what does that have to do with the actual fight? The final fight is earlier, and they do the wrap up stuff before that even. But as far as showing the end point culmination of Simone as a character, with the fight being the representation of that, which is one of the reasons why I feel like the fights in Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill and Premiere as well work so well, because even if they're ridiculous in the technical side and the actual enemies that they're facing, you might not even known existed at the beginning of the story. The themes and what it means for the character is consistent, and that's sort of the final nail in the coffin, the cherry on top of the sundae for all of that. With Kill la Kill, it's so tough though, because it's so personal. Like the idea that it's the family, it's the mother, it's with all the themes of growing up and coming of age and the identity and all of that, and the way that the villain in Kill la Kill is sort of the embodiment of all of that turned wrong, and then on the other side we have all of them sort of taking that back, and not losing their way,
I would say if I had to choose, Kill la Kill's edges out a little bit better, just because characters make the story for me. In some ways, the heroes on Gurren Lagann's side of things are fantastic, but it doesn't match up as well to the villains.
Sure.
I would say the villains in Kill la Kill definitely surpass in that respect Gurren Lagann's.
But then, so in Premiere though,
in Premiere,
that's one of those ones where, because when I first watched Premiere, because I've seen it a couple times now. First time I watched Premiere, I was like, okay, this is great fun, right?
Yep.
I didn't necessarily realize just how awesome a lot of the things were that they did in Premiere were on the first watch.
For sure.
Because it's a movie, so it's it's a lot shorter than a full Trigger show. It's condensed and things like that.
Yeah.
And with Premiere, they're so reveling in it just being basically a Trigger production,
Right,
like
right.
just unashamedly, like, oh yeah, you know what we're about, you know, and they do it right, and it's great. But things like the whole idea of the Burnish versus the humans and everything, and understanding that part of themselves and accepting it, but on both sides, right? Because the antagonists don't accept that,
right.
but they're also kind of going on this sort of journey by everything that they have believed in being sort of broken out from under them. Like it has this wonderful resolution to it that even in Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill you don't really get. Like which is weird to say, but like
sure,
in all of the ridiculous ways that you know that the people all working together, like them working together just means so much in Premiere, and it does in Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill too, but it's in a different way. Like
yeah, I would say in some cases that they tried to condense actually the Gurren Lagann power of friendship effect.
Yeah,
but Gurren Lagann's is, in my opinion, a little bit more raw, and it's in some ways a little bit more powerful for me. There's a lot of stuff that you get from having a series build up there, but also with the idea of the character development of the main character in the Gurren Lagann being something that needs special mention.
Yeah,
when you think about how the final battle has a couple layers to it that I can't really talk about because of spoilers.
Right,
but like
ways for the main character to get an introspective about how far they've come and who they really are.
Yep.
Because Simone as a character in Gurren Lagann is like, if you go from where he started to where he ends, it is so night and day different.
Yeah.
Like it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and the final fight is a little bit of kind of a fan servicey execution on all that development.
Yeah.
But there are a couple scenes in it, because the final battle isn't played out in the typical way of it being just a mano-a-mano or a group of this versus a group of that, or even just an internal thing. It's kind of all of it mashed together.
Right, in a way only Trigger can do. But I would say Gurren Lagann's aspect of it with the power of friendship and combining and all that kind of stuff is pretty fantastic. Yeah.
We're gonna shift veins here rather quickly and go to something a bit darker. Something a bit more
which one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is something where in terms of final battles, this is one where it's almost entirely based around the characters themselves rather than the plot of the series as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's in a much shorter series, so you end up getting, I would say, very high potential to miss things on execution because of how this works. But yeah,
you know what I love about this so much, though? I was literally debating mentioning this one specifically, and I was like, do I add this to the list? And I'm like, I'm not sure. There's probably others that fit the tab better, but I'm so glad you brought it up.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought it up. So
Take
we're talking Fate Zero.
No,
wait,
no, we're talking Madoka Magica. You dingus. Come on, look at your list right there. Literally on the...
yeah, okay.
I sing Yeah.
0 for 2. Okay. Yeah.
I can just do the whole thing if you want.
No. Okay, so Madoka Magica. There are two main fights really in this that are very much final fights that are incredibly important. Incredibly important in this series. And because the series is very tight. Wow, how did I think of Fate Zero? Oh my god. Okay, but yeah. So on the one hand, you've got Sayaka versus Kyoko. And as for what exactly is happening in these fights, we won't say because you know, spoilers and things like that.
Yep.
But it's something where in a very similar way not quite exactly the same. They're opposites, the characters, basically, right? So a fight between them is very important because it's showing how they sort of made a different decision very early on, right? In a similar way to Zuko Inazula and people like that. And what you thinking?
Oh, I'm just saying we haven't properly introduced the show yet.
Oh,
People have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, man.
So Madoka Magica. For those of you that have not seen this show, I do not recommend you look up anything about it.
Yes.
Because if you are living in a world where for some reason you haven't seen Madoka Magica, which came out in what, 2012?
2011, 2012, something like that.
2012.
Yeah.
This is one of the best anime of the decade.
Yep.
Please don't spoil this for anyone.
Do yourself a favor.
Do yourself a favor.
And watch it.
This is a ridiculously good good show. I don't recommend anything spin-off in addition to that. Just watch the original show. You're going to be good.
Yeah.
There are 2 fights that we're going to be bringing up here, and they each have very different dark undertones to them. But we're going to be more talking about how the story builds up to them and utilizes them than actually getting into the details of them there. But I almost recommend at about this point, if you haven't actually watched the show at all, like this is almost worth stopping the podcast entirely.
Yeah.
Because this is
like,
really
we'll keep
good.
it spoiler free, but basically the fights in this show, specifically between these 2 fights, are so important to the characters and where they are at as people and the conflicts that they're dealing with that it really puts them on a whole other level, right? In the Sayaka versus Kyoko one in particular, it has the conflict of ideals, right?
Yes.
Where one person very, very strongly believes one thing, the other person very strongly believes another thing. As soon as these characters like existed in a 10-mile radius of each other, they clashed.
You knew they
would
have to also have this fight.
And the thing is, they fought in build-up to this fight, which is impressive considering that the show is 13 episodes long.
Right.
But you just knew that this had to happen, right? You absolutely knew that it had to happen. But the way that the show has the characters grow in their own way along their differing ideals, building up to the fight and in the actual fight, right? It is nothing short of incredible. It is one of my favorite fights just out there in general, with the build-up and the resolution. Like,
the resolution is what I primarily want to talk about.
Oh my god.
So the show itself has multiple moments where you see fights that are happening and you basically just are begging them to stop. Just begging them, please stop fighting. As the main character often does in this show. Now, this fight between Kyoko and Sayaka is one where you can tell that there's one side here that's going to be losing, no matter what. This is not a fight about who's going to win.
Right.
But it's going to be, what is the consequences of this loss going to be? And the consequences of this loss are one of the most touching moments in the show. Because you have 2 characters who were both in some ways doomed to their own fatal flaw. Exactly. Madoka Magica, I would say, takes the aspect of the fatal flaw for its characters just in general and just says, oh, their entire character, because it's Urabuchi, the butcher, right, is going to suffer because of this fatal flaw. And the consequences of this one for Sayaka and Kyoko is one that it might not, absolutely break your heart and tear you to pieces, but it has the potential to.
And one of the things that I think is really important is that there are certain parts and stories where I absolutely love it, but my enjoyment either stays the same or kind of goes down maybe a little bit with time. This is not one of those. Every time I watch this fight in particular, I enjoy it more. Like, that's how much I love it. I don't want to overhype it for you, but the thing is that it's poetic in the best ways.
The other one that's really, really good to bring up, and this is where we are kind of like, okay, you're about like at the point where we we can't like not talk about this any further without spoiling you. So this is the big one, y'all. If you don't want to hear the big spoilers for
wait 5 or 10
Madoka
minutes
Magica,
and then come back.
Yeah, come back in 5 or 10 minutes because this is this is nuts.
Yeah.
This is Madoka Magica Homura versus Walpurgis Nacht. Yeah.
Walpurgis Nacht, however it's said.
Walpurgis Nacht.
Yeah.
Yes, it's German and it's terrifying. This is the realization that your best girl decision all along this point in the show was just wrong. Well, I'm just kidding. But
yeah,
this is the realization of a character's development in a backstory and a fight all combined into one.
Yeah.
And it's not just really the final battle against this this monstrosity here.
Right. It's what it represents. Because
exactly.
In both of these fights that we've talked about, the actual fight is about the internal struggle, right? And whether that will be won or lost.
Yep.
Because it can be lost.
Yep.
And the way that it goes into this character who you've seen essentially fighting this battle over the course of the entire show, right? Like it's not something where this is a new thing. It's not even something where this is a progression for them and then now they're at this point where they're at the sort of crossroads, but they've basically been standing in this crossroads the entire show, right? And now you actually get to see them forced to the point where they have to make a decision.
Yep.
Yeah, what will it be? You know, and the thing is that it's not simple. It's not simple. It's something where they are very much in conflict with themselves, which is, you know, that's where the best storytelling is in general.
Yep.
But you know, they're not perfect. So it won't necessarily go the way that you would hope.
Right. When we're talking about final battles, we're talking about the final battles for a character. It's
Yeah.
always it's always revolving around one of the characters in this conflict. It is their final conflict.
Right. Like, and not necessarily in the effect that, like, you know, someone has to die in this conflict, but like if they had an arc, if their story in this story ends here, right?
Yeah, because a lot of these happen to also be the final battles,
right?
But some of them aren't literally the final battle. And I think the main reason why we're not discussing that is that a lot of these end up being way more around specific kind of character moments that are far more spoilery when you hear them outside of the context.
Right. The less context you have, the better.
Yeah. And specifically with why Madoka Magica, I would say, is so good at this, is that every little bit of the show builds up specifically these characters having these big moments. And I love this one specifically because the character of Homura is one that you go from seeing one way to seeing an entirely different way within the context of this of this final bit of conflict here. And as far as having a one cour anime that somehow makes you so attached to a small cast of characters, relatively,
but still,
so well attached to them, and kind of messing around with your mind and heart and soul within a couple of the tropes that they've established through the genre that they're in. Madoka Magica, go watch it. This is the really good stuff out there.
It is absolutely wonderful.
Since we had it spoiled a little bit beforehand here, though, let's talk about Fate Zero, and I think we should both handle each of our favorite final fights in this one here, because I know what yours is going to be, and you know what mine's going to be. Yeah. So, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Go for it.
So this is another Gen Urobuchi, Urobuchi work here. Fate Zero is a prequel to the Fate Stay Night, Fate Unlimited Blade Works storylines and what have you. And Fate is a whole it's a whole bag of cats. Like, it's a whole mess of a thing there. But here's one of the great things about Fate Zero as opposed to the rest of the Fate stuff out there. There's a really deeply ingrained philosophical battle / conflict that's being thematically approached differently by the characters in Fate Zero. That they just don't really do this kind of thing as well. and the other ones.
Right.
Fate Unlimited Blade Works does some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it still does it, but it's in a different way. It's still really cool.
Yes,
but it's not as, you don't necessarily realize how integral it is to the story.
And both of these fights, we're not saying that one is better than the other definitively or what have you. We just prefer.
I certainly have a personal preference.
We have personal preferences, exactly. So for mine, it's Kira Kotomine. And you hear us constantly in discussions making jokes about this guy named Kira Kotomine.
Yep.
It's because he has one of the best dub voice actors in the industry, but also in the sub, he has one of the best voice actors.
Yeah.
Just absolutely delivering these dripping lines of
wonderful.
I am a villain.
Yep.
I am a bad guy. My voice is so baritone and deep. It's almost a meme at this point for us.
Yeah.
But he is also up against probably the most Spike Spiegel Cowboy Bebop ripoff character I've seen in anime.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Oh, it's great.
Love it.
So awesome. Yep.
Oh my god.
Like the fight itself is spectacular in ways that only Ufotable can do, right?
So like all y'all that are like Demon Slayer animation, like go back to
Check
2012.
out this stuff.
Go back to 2012 or 2011 actually. Again, one of those like early anime of the decade.
I think it was 2012.
I think it was 2012.
And then UBW was 2014.
2014, yeah. This has just some good quality mano-y-mano throwdown with some anime, crazy magic or what have you that you're not necessarily going to understand fully, but
you don't really need to understand it fully. You understand enough for what they're doing and for the differing ideals that the two of them have.
Yep.
Right?
So you have one character who started off as kind of one of the most one-note, and it's funny because the way I'm going to say this, you're not going to be able to tell who I'm talking about. Started about like kind of the most one-note kind of character with a simple just goal.
Yeah.
He had like a simple, just specific goal there. And yeah, that's kind of both the characters there.
Sure.
One of them specifically has a little bit of a more obvious like, I'm not really a good guy necessarily, but I'm not necessarily like they evil or anything.
They even kind of tell you at the beginning because it's like, oh, this person, they're just sort of a regular person, right? No. If you look closely and you analyze the psychology of this person, you know that they're actually a messed up bastard, right?
Yeah.
But
over the course of the series, you get to put each of these characters against, and I would say next to, in a way to showcase their differences and their issues, what these characters really want. And that is it. That is simply the story. It is a story of two men that over the course of time discover what they really want.
Yeah.
And they were wrong all along about what they really wanted.
Right. There was what they thought they wanted.
There was what they thought they wanted.
There was what they actually wanted.
And then there's what they actually wanted. And by the end of the fight, they both know, or in some ways a little bit before the fight, they know exactly what they want.
Right.
And there is a definitive winner to this battle, even though neither side fully actually ends the other, because their fight isn't really about each other. They never actually encounter each other prior to this moment.
Oh, that's
in the anime.
Yeah, they really don't. They know of each other.
They know of each other. But the actual confrontation here feels like this odd twist of fate that these broken men... Yeah, I know what I did there. That these broken men would actually come at each other here at this fortuitous kind of location, if you will.
Which all then also through the lens of this is a prequel, so that the way they end things is very interesting.
Yeah. But then that in of itself, you're invested in both sides because you've watched them both be built up there. And the reason why I'd also say watch Fate Zero first is because I do think that the finale is far more impactful without having seen any of the stuff that happens in the future afterwards.
Yeah, because it's
personally
like both definitely work. It takes a different tone, and the tone does work both ways. But I personally would say Fate Zero first as well.
Yeah, and I also like that in some ways the stakes regarding the fight are more about what the characters will do once they're free to not be fighting each other. Both of them kind of in some ways, they lose. They both kind of lose in a weird way with this fight. And I kind of wanted to not really spoil anything there, but the fight itself is a technical, fun, fast-paced encounter. Looks really good.
And so by the way, if you do watch this in the dub, then basically you have Crispin Freeman, who, if you don't know, did Alucard.
Yeah.
Same voice actor for Alucard, actually, in the sub as well. Interesting coincidence.
Right.
But,
yeah.
And then on the other side, you have Matt Mercer.
Yes.
So
yes.
So it's kind of awesome.
It's pretty good. So,
but that's that fight
that
from
fight.
Fate Zero. My personal favorite. The reason why I was talking earlier back when I thought we were talking about Fate Zero.
Right. Yes.
About how I wasn't sure about actually mentioning Fate Zero is because this fight is a very non-traditional fight.
Yes.
And the real fight is all about the ideals, the characters and what they believe in, right?
Yep.
But the weird thing is that there's 3 people in this fight. And that's the fight of Archer versus Ryder.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have basically... So, on the one hand, you have Gilgamesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is, I am the hero of heroes, right?
Yes.
And he's
the
got
King of Kings.
the King of Kings, and he's got the personality to match it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Alexander the Great.
Yep.
Now,
Conquerors of Conquerors.
Conqueror of Conquerors, right? And then you have Waver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, I love Waver.
Yeah.
And the reason why I love this fight the most is because in Fate Zero, they do this absolutely wonderful thing where you see Waver, who's this kid. He's like, just out of high school, kind of wanting to make a name for himself. He wants to be a mage. And he's very much an underdog. But the thing is, it's something where he has this crippling inferiority complex.
Yep.
Where he thinks he's never going to be enough. He's constantly been told he's never going to be enough, but he wants to prove them wrong. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why he gets involved in this whole escapade. He risks his life and does all these things because he wants to believe that, at the very least, he was worth something. Right?
Yep.
And then he ends up going around on this adventure of sorts with Alexander the Great.
Who is this larger-than-life?
Larger-than-life in every possible way.
Confidence, screaming out from his thunder thighs and massive ruddy beard, you know?
And it is this amazing contradiction between the two of them in their interactions because they are about as opposite as can be, right? And just watching the clips of Ryder and Waver, their talks are amazing. I rewatch those so much it's not even funny, right? You could almost watch the entire show just for these two, even if you weren't actually interested in the fights. And the fights are amazing.
Yes.
But there's this notion of Waver wondering, am I good enough? Right? And Ryder being like, I'm gonna do awesome stuff and it's gonna be great. And you know what, kid? I want to teach you what it means to be your best self.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So just sort of watch.
Just watch me do this.
Just watch me, right?
Yep.
And over the course of the show, they get to know each other a lot better. They also have a wonderful interaction with Gilgamesh at a point where they talk about their differences and everything. And it's another situation where Ryder basically says, hey, watch me talk to this guy about what it really means to be a king.
That's probably one of the best scenes in the show.
It's so good. It is so good. And when it comes to the final fight,
yes,
the real final fight is not the actual throwdown.
Nope.
It's what happens before and what happens after.
Yeah, more before than after.
More before.
More before, yeah.
Now, there's a thing that I want to talk about specifically that is kind of a spoilery bit, so I'm not going to, but basically...
Well, I think you can do it for this one, because it's the one about where Waver is the...
So
it's a mechanic of the fight.
So throughout this show, Alexander the Great has been, in his Alexander the Great fashion, asking everybody, "Hey, y'all should join me. I want to conquer the world. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have epic times together. It's gonna be awesome.
Great generals of
right. I respect you guys a lot. You're fantastic. Yes, Ryder is absolutely best girl.
Yeah.
And of course, Waver is watching all of this, thinking, yeah, well, you know, these people are all awesome and badasses and everything, but I'm worthless. I'm nothing, right? Even though he's kind of helping Alexander the Great do all the stuff that he's doing.
Yeah.
There's a point where you realize what Ryder's ability is, and it's basically power of friendship weaponized, right? Where everyone that he's ever fought with, he summons them up once again to fight once more. Right? And it's absolutely fantastic. It's awesome. It's one of the best. With his ululating battle cry and everything. It's
so badass.
It is wonderful. It's badass, and it's something where the actual power that he has essentially is very closely tied to who he is as a person, what he's all about. And it's this wonderful display, and Waver gets to see it. And it's this amazing moment. Amazing moment. And it shows all the soldiers, not all of them, but you know, it goes through a bunch of them.
A good chunk of them,
and it's cool, like just on a technical level, like they have like all these different character designs and things like that. But then there's one that's a bit different.
Kind of stands out.
Wait
a minute, I recognize
like
him.
He's not wearing armor like the rest of them. He's wearing a suit. And you're like, damn, that guy's badass. You don't even necessarily realize it until you watch to the end of Unlimited Blade Works. But you realize that this is actually Waver 10 years older. Fully realized, come into his own, being the person that he always wanted to be. And he's a badass. And he looks like a badass. And that is absolutely wonderful. Waver doesn't realize it. He doesn't notice the guy. He doesn't, nope, it's just, another person there, right? Then before the final battle between Alexander and Gilgamesh, they know this final battle's about to happen. And Waver basically says, go. I know I would only get in the way. So but man, do I respect you. I would love to one day be like you. Go and win this battle. Go and, go on your conquering conquest. Like do all of that and more. And then Ryder does the thing that just breaks my heart every single time. It's so wonderful. Big old guy, right?
Really
Alexander the Great. Just his horse, like Waver doesn't even hardly come up to its back, right? He just picks him up and puts him on the saddle in front. Like, all right, let's go. It's like, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing me? I can't help you. He's like, no, you're one of my comrades. I want you with me. I wouldn't have it any other way. And then they go. And there's a point during the battle where Gilgamesh basically looks at Waver and he basically says, "You sure you want to be here, kid? Like, I will, I'll have to kill you. Like, and I will definitely kill you." And basically there's Alexander says, "Don't actually fight him, right? Let me handle this. Like, you're with me, and thank you, right?" And he basically says, "No, I'm not going to fight you, Gilgamesh. Sorry." Like, really? Like, yeah, because if I did, I'd die. He told me to survive.
Oh, I think that was after the fight. Yeah, someone in chat is bringing.
Yeah. I was trying to shift things up just a little bit so that way, if for some reason you haven't heard it, you wouldn't be. You wouldn't quite know what was going on.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
Okay.
But it's this wonderful thing where basically Waver ends up beating Gilgamesh in this fight because he wins him over. And in a lot of cases, in spite of how the fight goes, Alexander won him over. Because it's not about who is stronger.
Right.
It's about which way of life is better.
Yeah, that's kind of a theme of Fate Zero as a whole. There are a lot of people that win the physical confrontations, but there are other people that win the actual like psychological and philosophical battle.
Yep. Your loyalty is splendid. Never tarnish it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really special show. So that one is probably one of our most kind of anime ones there, other than the next one that I'm gonna bring up, because this one needs no introduction. this one perfectly encapsulates the most, I would say, quintessential anime confrontations, and that is freaking JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Ow.
Yeah.
I want to talk about two specific parts here. Two specific parts of JoJo's that have, in my opinion, the best finales that I've seen thus far. I haven't finished part 5, so I don't know how its finale goes. But part 2 and part 3 of JoJo's.
Oh, man.
Oh, ooh, mwah, mwah.
Yep.
So, part 2, I'm going to go with first, because I feel like most everyone knows part 3's
yeah,
ending at this point.
Just a bit.
But with part 2, you have the trickster. You have the main character that is the jokester. The one that makes it up as he goes along. The one that tries to crawl away slowly when the camera's not pointing at him on screen. And
the joke star?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he, as a character, doesn't have this grand kind of foreshadowing of confronting the final ascendant pillar.
Yes.
Pillar man just, cars himself. It is more along the lines of a character who ends up realizing that, you know what? Yeah, power of friendship. Yeah, I have a lot I'm doing this for.
Yep.
There was a good guy that I need to get some revenge for, but also, holy crap, I have no idea what's happening, and this is all going nuts. I need to just kind of figure this out and wing it as I go. But we are so invested via the way that they built up the finale, because it is so ridiculous, and because of the way part 1 of JoJo's ended, which I want to bring up as in context here. It is the same season of JoJo's, actually.
Right.
It's all 26 episodes, basically. You are genuinely, concerned for Joseph the whole way through this fight. There is no way that he can actually,
do this.
Actually do this.
No way.
And as far as the rules that I brought up, which make up for a good conclusion here, part 2 just kind of goes, nah, none of that.
Yeah.
None of that. None of it really works. You don't really care about cars at the end of this whole thing here.
Yeah, the most reason you hate him is because he played guitar on Lisa's leg.
It's so over the top and hype, but the actual stakes, because this is something where the story does continue, are extremely high, because that there's the potential that there could be story after this where Joseph's not there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And
think of a world like that. That's just awful.
I think Araki basically thought of that too, and he was like, ugh, no. Spoiler alert, Joseph lives.
Right.
And it's
somehow.
It's the best. I almost don't want to tell you the details of the fight, because that's where the big spoilers are, is just how funny it is.
Oh, man.
Did you plan this too, JoJo?
You're goddamn right. Yeah. Jack Sparrow of JoJo.
Narrator, he did not plan this. Exactly. Yeah, Joseph Joestar is the quintessential Jack Sparrow type of character.
Yep. And
he
it's
is bullshitting
lovely.
his way the whole way to victory. It is one of the most fun finales ever.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about this from a storytelling angle. It's JoJo's. It's so bombastic and insane.
But that there's just no way he can do this, so you really want to see what he comes up with.
And the fact that it ends in this specific way, in this dramatic presentation with Sonochino Sadame blasting its way through the full song, ending at the perfect moment, I cannot tell you the elation that I felt upon seeing the ridiculous way it ended.
Yeah.
With some dramatic, permanent consequences still, though, for our protagonist.
Yes.
And, the rest just needs no mention. But I'm kind of rapid firing this one because I want to get to the big
one that everybody knows
that
about.
Everyone knows about. That I feel like this one fulfills almost every rule that we set up perfectly. Yeah. And that is JoJo's Part 3, Dio versus Jotaro in the And yeah,
you know it, you love it, whether from the memes or the
Right.
actual show.
Right, exactly. Now, the rest of the show, this is one of the shows that I wanted to bring up as the final fight actually stands out amongst a bunch of, build up to it that wasn't necessarily that good.
No.
Part 3 has a lot of
Just, all right, let's get to Egypt. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I would say part 3 as a whole jumps dramatically in storytelling quality once they actually arrive in Egypt.
yes.
Like, I mean,
agree.
dramatically
Mhm.
so. There's some part 3 earlier, first kind of 2/3 of the story where you're like, okay, yeah, it's
All right.
JoJo's. We're having a bunch of wacky fun, but story-wise,
Mhm.
yikes. So, the way they set it up, with a perfect reason as to why we have to stop Dio with Holly, wonderfully well done. The characters that all have some connection to both Dio and the Joestars in the way that builds up the Stardust Crusaders as they
Mhm.
move their way over to Egypt. And also the little mini confrontations of sorts with Dio's minions, building up this constant idea of the one to end it all will be Star Platinum.
Yep.
So by the time we're actually getting to Dio, you're thinking, we've gone through all this crazy stuff to get here, and Dio's supposed to be a god compared to them? Okay, I guess hopefully just some ora will be enough to beat this.
Right.
And they do, in my opinion, one of the most clever things with regards to building up this fight.
Mhm.
They just show Dio doing things with regular people. I think the scene with him and the senator,
Oh.
help me out, chat, what the actual
Yeah.
senator's
Uh-huh.
name. That was one of the most chilling ways
Yeah.
to remind
Yeah.
us how terrifyingly villainous and evil
Senator
he is.
Phillips.
Senator Phillips, exactly.
That's right.
And we see not only how terrifying he is with, incidents like with Polnareff and stuff in,
Sure.
in the tower there, but just what a monster this guy is and how
Oh, yeah.
he must be
Yep.
stopped.
Yep.
The idea of the ideals, beliefs, motivations, what have you of Dio against Jotaro's they're plain as day. It's so black
Yeah.
and white, it's easy.
Mhm.
But the idea that, yeah, Dio is one that we kind of have to use our investment from part 1 to carry over here. And that doesn't necessarily work that well depending on how you view the pacing issues of part 3.
I will say,
Except-
though, Vanilla Ice right before, that did a number.
Yeah, but that wasn't Dio, though.
No, right. But as far as, to help be like, okay, we're in the end game now. Like, this is happening.
Mhm.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Now, specifically with the build-up, though, for the investment here, they get you really attached to seeing Jotaro absolutely demolish Dio. And it just
Yeah.
ramps up nonstop all the way to the end to where, again, Araki kind of leaned on the same thing he kind of leaned on in part 2. And it was like, oh, people really like Joseph. Yeah, let's come really close to killing him again. But it works so much better in this one here. Because not only are there moments where he actually freaking donuts Kakyoin,
right?
He actually nearly, kind of does maybe even kill Joseph.
Yep.
And when that happened, it led to, that images that precede unfortunate or legendary events. That whole bit there was like a combination of the two.
Oh yeah.
Because right after that we go to Dio. Ho ho, you're approaching me.
Right. Yeah.
This whole confrontation from then on out is just some of the best stuff that JoJo's has provided. It's so good.
Yep.
The stakes are high. The investment on both sides is good. There's a ton of proper foreshadowing and build up to this. The forces opposing each other are just titanic in nature. And the hype is so real when you get into this actual
really
confrontation.
Is. Even though it took a long time to get there, once you're there, it's like, all right. Yep. Here we go. Let's do this.
Yep. And I could see a lot of people not really getting behind the fight in of itself because it is kind of memey and over the top and what have you.
Sure. And why didn't Dio use his eye lasers and all this other stuff?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. But I cannot just talk about final battles in general without mentioning that fight. it was
Yeah.
it was one for the record books out there.
So
But yeah, the world sound effects are so good. Yeah,
it
that's
really
true.
is.
Yep.
So I'm gonna mention a small one before we get to the final one. That's Bacano. Now,
yes.
Bacano is an absolutely amazing, rule of cool, wonderful show that you should definitely watch if you haven't yet. It's very short, very compact, very tight, tons of characters, amazing, fantastic English dub, action is wonderful. Watch it if you haven't, right? You're missing out. But there are lots of fights in Bacano. The one that I would consider to be the final fight, though, is not in a lot of ways, the biggest final fight. Rail Tracer versus Lad. That is quite a fight. But personally for me, final fight is Jacuzzi
Splot. Yep.
Jacuzzi Splot versus the Rail Tracer.
Which that name, I will never get tired of saying the name Jacuzzi Splot.
Yeah.
And the realization that he's actually the most cowardly badass in anime, probably.
Now, here's the thing. Jacuzzi doesn't actually fight the Rail Tracer. And that's what I think is so perfect. Like, their whole exchange, the whole sort of final confrontation between the two of them is like 30 seconds long. Like from start to end, right? And they never actually throw a single blow against each other.
Nope.
But after everything that the Rail Tracer has been doing over the course of this show, right? And he's standing there literally covered head to toe in other people's blood. Right? And has dispatched badasses of the highest order, and Jacuzzi is definitely not a badass. He is in his own way.
I mean, he is.
He is in his own way, but
he's about to show you how like thick and heavy his stones are.
Right, but it's because of his heart and yes, his stones. Even though he is a terrified kid, really, he's willing to actually stand up to the Raiders.
Yes.
And he is actually like, even though he's wounded, he's just fought some
Knees
crazy
weak,
dude at the
arms are heavy,
flamethrower and
mom's spaghetti. He's vomiting on his sweater already. He's nervous.
Right. Like, and all he has is a little bomb, right? And there is this living nightmare drenched in blood standing before him. And he's like, okay, I guess I have to do this because, you've been on your killing spree and you're here to hurt my friends. I'm not gonna let you do that, right?
Yep.
And there's like no talking in the actual. I think they might.
There's actually a little bit.
There's a little bit of talking, but next to no talking, right? Because again, 30 seconds,
right?
And the Rail Tracer just looks at him, sticks his finger, then leaves. And it's just like, oh man.
And then at that moment, then all the fear and everything just hits him, and he's just like,
oh my god,
like, oh my god, that was so stressful.
Like,
it's the idea of, those moments where you have the mafia kind of stare down, or like kind of the spaghetti western stare down.
What, like doing the
they're both ready to
twitchy
draw,
fingers,
what have you. And in this case, it's the Chihuahua basically staring down the bull elephant,
right?
And it's just like, yeah, come at me. And the elephant, like, genuinely is like, you're kidding, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, wait a minute. For some reason, it's so confident.
Well, and it's not that the Rail Tracer is scared of
No,
Jacuzzi.
of course not.
No way. But it's basically it's the condensed emotional growth and everything from fights that we've talked about before, without any actual fight. Where the fight is potentially going to happen, but the decision that the person is basically willing to do this fight, even though they know they'll lose.
They will lose.
Right? Horribly. No contest, no question about it, right? But they still make the decision to do it. They won.
Yep.
They won even though they didn't win the actual fight. There didn't end up needing to be a fight. And it's just, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that one of my favorite things in anime, oftentimes, is the subversion of expectations when you would, in a lesser show, show these characters fight because you need to have a fight at the final bit there. But the motivations of the characters don't line up in such a way that they should have any conflict with each other. And this happens with Jacuzzi Splot and the Rail Tracer. Jacuzzi Splot's I will protect my friends. It's the most anime protagonist motivation ever.
Yep.
The Rail Tracer's motivations are pretty complicated compared to that.
Yeah.
And they do not require him to fight this kid.
Mm-hmm.
They do not.
Nope.
So he does not fight him.
Right.
And it's not a thing of, well, plot armor, he could have just totally killed him. It's like, well, yeah, of course he could have.
Yeah.
But he actually didn't have a reason to do it. He had another reason that was more important.
And Jacuzzi has no idea of these motivations, right? From us, the audience, like, especially on rewatch, because Baccano is very complicated and whatnot,
very
and hard
much
to get
a
everything on the
rewatch
first
kind
watch.
of show. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you do watch it and you're like, this is very confusing, that's okay. He didn't know that when he made the decision.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the decision all the same, even though he knows that essentially there's a net underneath, underneath the tightrope that he's gonna walk. He still does it.
Yep.
So
yeah. Baccano is one that I thought about, but it didn't end up on my list, because we both basically combine lists and bring a bunch of things here. The one that I want to bring up here is one that was very impactful recently, but it was not one that kind of fits the I would say the individual character versus individual character thing. It's more of the faction versus faction kind of conflict. But it had so many plot lines converging and ending, and character arcs, I would say specifically more so, ending in this big climactic showdown. And that is the whole of basically part 2 of Attack on Titan Season 3.
Yep.
So, for those of you that have been living under a rock, Attack on Titan's back. I know, they had more content after Season 1. It's crazy, right? But
and oh my god,
it is so good. Attack on Titan Season 3 got split into two parts. It's all one season.
Yep.
But the second, third, minus maybe about 5 episodes at the end, maybe about 4 episodes at the end, is an arc that is just the final
pure execution on everything that's been like built up till this point.
It's the finale in some ways of the show before it switches genres, by the way.
Yeah.
Or switches entirely the type of conflict story that it is. Now, the battle of Shiganshina Fields, exactly.
Straight up,
you,
even with a blonde Theoden, shouting death. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just gotta say that Attack on Titans Season 3's confrontation between the Titans, I won't go into specifics here because if you watch the show, you don't need me to say anything specifically.
The Titans versus the humans.
And the humans.
Right.
Has some of the most dramatic character moments in Attack on Titan, but also some of the most foreshadowed and built up epic.
Yep.
I hate using that word, but like
there is no better way to describe it. Yeah.
It is perfect. It has sacrifice. It has confrontations and matchups that you weren't necessarily expecting to have happen in a specific way.
Yes, you mean Jotaro versus Dio round 2? Yeah. Yep.
Oh my god.
And the thing is that it doesn't fully work as just a final battle because there's multiple battles and different locations and things like that. But Attack on Titan just does such a good job of having them all happen at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And foreshadowing.
Oh yeah.
You have no idea. Like even you, Caleb, have no idea.
Okay. But still, that's great. But like it hits every box on this exceptionally well. Opposing force, the fact that there are so many motivations combating in this massive clash of not only beliefs and ideals, but actual allegiance. There's loyalties that are mixed amongst the groups, obviously, but they're there and they're strong. That means that not only do you have the proper foreshadowing, you have ridiculously high investment on both sides.
Yep.
And I will say that one of the things that Attack on Titan absolutely nailed in the second season, in preparation for this third season's confrontation here, was they gave one specific character. Well, no, both of them. They gave both of them, the boys, well, should I not spoil it?
So, when it ends up, why don't we talk about with the Titan identities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They built up the side of the Titans, let's just say,
Right.
really well in season 2 for this moment here. So that the stakes for the conclusion of this are ridiculously high, not just for the protagonists and how it has been in previous seasons.
And they are high for the protagonists.
But I will say that a lot of the flaws of Attack on Titan in the earlier parts is one where you don't necessarily know that much about what's going on the antagonist side of things. And over the course of season 2, season 3, and season 3 part 2, you start to realize, oh my god, this is not so simple anymore.
Yep.
And that is done perfectly well. And then when they actually execute on everything, the hype and regret aspect you were bringing up in the beginning.
Yeah.
There
like, okay,
all of the yes.
Am I biased about Attack on Titan?
Of course.
Yes, definitely. It was the one that really got me to start searching out anime.
Yeah.
But it nails the things that it nails really, really, really well. Like one of the best things about this journey of Attack on Titan for me is that it kind of has a similar feeling of like Bleach for me, in that it was one of the early on anime that I watched. So it has a lot of nostalgia for me, and yet it just kept getting better. Like it didn't have some of the issues where you go back and look on something and you're like, oh, that wasn't really as good as I thought. Like it still has that, but in all kinds of other ways, it totally stands the test of time. And the way that it made it so that the characters, which were always one of Attack on Titan's like weaker points, their conflicts and their struggles in these final moments that is half a season, so good, so personal, so do or die, like, and the culmination of all the growth that had been happening internally for them since the very beginning of the series. Like, it's, oh my god.
And this is not the final battle of the series, of course, because this is still continuing.
But for a lot of people in that series.
But for a lot of people it is.
It
and
is
not only for
battle.
that, I would say it's the final battle under these types of circumstances.
The rules change after this.
The rules completely change
and
after
essentially
this.
For the show that Attack on Titan was, that you knew of Attack on Titan being, this is the end.
This is the end, yep.
It's not over. It's
gets
not weirder,
over.
But
I am hoping it gets crazier. I cannot wait for it to get crazier. I have so many theories about that. But like,
for everything that we had, this is the end. Oh yeah. Okay, so Arenthia made a great point. Yeah.
When it first
came out, manga readers had absolutely no idea how perfect the game would resolve. People were guessing basement rushes, new characters, etc. All it took was pre-existing characters and knowledge. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, I can't remember the last time I had something that was that emotionally gripping, like on so many levels, where I was just completely at the mercy of Isayama of like, what are you gonna do? Because think of it, half a season of pure execution.
Yep.
Like, the only thing I can think of that really comes close, but even then not really, is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood's finale. Right? Because, they had a whole core for the finale.
Right.
That's essentially what this is, except one, the story's not over.
Yeah.
And two, even in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, there was sort of a lot more progression and things like that within that season.
Yes, they still were building up things within that final core of the anime.
Whereas this is like almost none of that. It's just like pure, straight injection into your veins. Awesome.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. That's our last one that we're bringing up here. There are a lot of other really good final conflicts, final battles and stuff out there that we didn't mention, but we kind of wanted to cover different bases of ones that we kind of prefer.
Right. Like things that
specifically there.
Right, because in anime there are plenty of final battles, like final fights that are so iconic and so good. It's like, how can you really avoid them? So we're kind of taking a bit of a different angle on like the definitions of battle and things like that in order to get at some ones that you may not have heard talked about in this fashion.
Yeah, and I think that there are a couple in here that were very definitely like ones that you kind of expected. But when it comes to final battles in anime, a lot of the anime that tend to kind of do this thing really well are kind of the ones that have definitive endings to their story. And when we say that, that can be an arc of a story. That doesn't have to be like the entire aspect of the plot or what have you. But it can also mean the ending of a character's journey and story.
Right.
And I would say that a lot of the ones that we didn't mention have like very serious continuations of the characters beyond that kind of final battle, if you will. So I'm curious to kind of ones that you would have liked to have us bring up there, and or like what are ones that you would like to see us kind of give a little bit of a talk about here in the last kind of few minutes of the podcast.
Wow. Well, asking about what about the final battle of Battle Lines?
no, it's good. Nier Automata. Oh, well, I can't really go too in depth into that without spoiling Jacob, and I kind of want him to play the game. But I would say that the final battle in Nier Automata, yeah, it would definitely have gone on this list if Jacob wasn't here.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Hanakawa versus the Tiger.
Ooh.
Yeah,
yes.
Because Monogatari is not about the actual fights. It's very much about the meaning behind the fights for the characters.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought about that one, but that's a great point.
There's a lot of foreshadowing built up to it. There's a very clear opposing force in there, and it is an internal battle as well as an external one.
And of all of the other characters in Monogatari, I feel like Hanakawa is one of the ones that got the most screen time focus in those earlier segments,
sure.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. That's a fantastic one.
Oh yeah.
Haikyuu, I think definitely kind of works there with the Shiro Torizawa stuff there. Meruem from Hunter x Hunter. Yeah, I think Meruem from Hunter x Hunter is a really good one. I would say that if you wanted to do Meruems from Hunter x Hunter, and this is why I would say it's rather good, is that again, it's not the style of final battle you'd think. I wouldn't put Netero as being the final battle for Meruem there. It would actually be his attaining humanity.
Right.
His attaining humanity and his struggle to find and search for identity along that path.
Yeah.
And then once he finally finds it and he finds happiness and love, the battle is over.
Right. Because he won that battle, even if he won but lost
the physical battle.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's a good one. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Caleb, the prequel to Nier Automata is coming to PC in a remake. Ooh, okay.
Nice.
Thankfully, I wouldn't have had to play that to learn this story because I got all the lore kind of condensed in those Clemps videos. But yeah,
Jesus, Psychronia, Maiden Abyss, Reg versus Midi.
Oh man.
Ping pong. Ping pong. Yeah, that was a good one. Because again, it's something where it's not about who actually wins the game.
Yeah.
It's about the rescuing of the friend and sort of rekindling that friendship and reaffirming how important it is and everything.
Yeah. I would say that ping pongs is one that I would almost not want to just discuss casually. I would want to go back, rewatch the show, and kind of break it apart a bit more as well. Because that show really is a good character study on I would say the essence of desire and competition, passion, and dreams. It's really good.
So Sword of the Stranger was actually one of it was almost like the poster child of why we wanted to be so particular with how we did it, is because the execution and the choreography for the Sword of the Stranger final fight is so good. It's like it would be the token thing to talk about almost in like something like this, or at least one of them.
But you're not necessarily as invested.
But you're not as invested in the characters, right? In a lot of ways, I would say for the final battle of Sword of the Stranger, it's actually before the final battle where Nanashi actually draws his sword for the first time, and then so here's why. Because
Did you say Nanashi?
Nanashi.
Oh, Nanashi.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
because
keep going.
Because it's at that point where he wins the battle of coming to terms and forgiving himself for the things that he did in his past, right? And then he basically takes back his skills and his abilities and uses them for something good in saving I forget the kid's name, but then he does the awesome sword throw. That's the final battle for me in Sword of the Stranger.
Zoro versus Directions. Exactly. You have a Nina Fusion t-shirt. Your high ground is invalid. Oh my god.
The final battle of a silent voice. Shoya forgiving himself gets me every time. Yeah. Both from when he's is holding someone by the hand, and also when all the X's fall off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Lit comes in at that perfect time. Like, yep, it's amazing.
We already mentioned Meruem.
Because Komugi is and his own humanity is more of the true like final fight,
right?
As amazing as the Netero and.
Any examples of bad final battles in your opinion? Well, I mean, in some reasons, in some ways, I would say a lot of bad final battles are ones that should have been final, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Like in that respect, I feel like it's our dislike of shows that refuse to just end. Like, there's a lot of shows and anime out there that are kind of like, we can't help it. We need to keep this thing going.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not even that the plot tries to keep going. It's that they're trying to keep a dead character alive in some ways. Like, it's like, no, we don't care about any of these characters. Stop trying to make us care with fights. Like, you got to rebuild them from the ground up almost in a lot of ways. Like, yeah. It's funny, Realkin, I mentioned Monster previously in the podcast, and that was the one that I didn't want people to clue into necessarily. So if you stuck it all the way to this end bit of the podcast, now you know which anime I was struggling to not mention. Sheev versus Rey in the Demise of Skywalker.
Oh, God.
There you go. That's a horrendous final battle. Holy crap! Yeah. I don't even.
The arc from Kironia Boy doesn't count.
yeah. Oh my god, that. God, so bad. Did you guys not mention Naruto versus Sasuke's final fight? Okay, Naruto versus Sasuke's final fight.
That's a really good one.
I know enough about the general knowledge of it to understand why that rivalry final battle between the two of them was really good.
Yeah. The tough thing for me, because I was actually thinking about that one too, but because I stopped watching Naruto, I did end up watching the final fight, but because that was the fight versus like the build-up surrounding it, I didn't know how I would really talk about it other than on the actual execution of the spectacle of the fight, which was done very well, and they tied it into the characters and everything very well. Worst final battle, Cersei versus Brix.
I would say actually this is one that's not an anime, but it's one that I think a lot of people don't really bring up in fantasy specifically, because I brought up Lord of the Rings. I wanted to bring up why in a lot of ways like Harry Potter just had a horrendous ending in the books, in my opinion, and kinda for the
what would be the real finale of like the final battle of Harry Potter?
It's the one where he goes to die.
Yes,
when he goes to when he goes to sacrifice himself.
Yep.
No, I think in the books as well, it's really, really like painful dialogue.
And like what did Harry learn exactly that made
I would have liked it more in the books. Sorry, but I still don't like it in the books.
I liked the power move of Harry calling Voldemort Tom, right? But the thing is that I feel like that there wasn't enough narrative weight and growth behind it in order for it to really feel cathartic for me. It felt like he was more of just sort of posturing and doing it to aggravate Voldemort, which worked from a strategy perspective to get Voldemort to do something stupid, right?
Yeah.
But as far as like the emotional meaning behind it, because I feel like there wasn't enough conflict within Harry as a main character, because they still they had the parallel kind of within Voldemort in that Voldemort had marked Harry, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was never an emotional conflict within Harry of what he was going to do about what was going on, right?
Well, okay. I don't think that's entirely the case. I just don't think it was a great one.
Gotcha.
I definitely would say that there was some, but one of the problems I would say most people have usually within the movie version of Harry Potter is Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
It's generally the protagonist that a lot of your story ends up being built upon, and because Harry Potter as a series is primarily a kind of a My Magic Academia kind of story, Harry Potter is actually a pretty decently proactive protagonist for the series overall, but he kind of gets muddled into the less nuanced, only reactive protagonist in the movies. So I think a lot of people color that over the Harry of the books, who is just a different character. Okay. But anyway.
Oh yeah, Mustang versus Envy. Yeah, Mustang versus Envy
that's really good.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, that's a great one for live action hardback. Inigo Montoya versus Count Rugen. That is a legitimately good final battle, and no, I'm not joking. It is hilariously funny throughout the movie. Like, the Princess Bride movie is really funny, but the actual final battle, it fits all the bills of our bit here.
Even though it's done in a very sort of tongue-in-cheek, cheesy way.
Oh yeah. It's super cheesy. But Inigo Montoya doesn't have to survive. The stakes are there. The investment on both sides is there. You hate this guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's a pretty, like, condescending, pretentious douchebag.
Yep.
Then the foreshadowing has been there, slammed in your face over and over and over again. My name is Inigo Montoya, you know? And then, of course, also the character motivation, ideals and beliefs, the revenge, and what have you.
Okay, Amaju, great point. This is an old one, but it does hold up in my mind. Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi. Because that's one where the stakes are super high, right? Because it's essentially the soul of Vader, right?
Right.
And he doesn't believe he can actually change and grow and all that stuff. Luke's trying to tell him that he can and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Commodus versus Maximus, I think that part of my issue with that one there is, because we're not talking about anime anymore, one of my issues with live action, specifically in live action, is how much of it is based around the acting of a specific character really making you dislike them rather than a lot of what makes them a character. So Commodus is, he's a little prick. And the actor who plays him, I believe Joaquin Phoenix, freaking the Joker in the recent one there.
He does a really good job of being
stellar.
A prick.
He nails the character, but I'm more depressed during that finale than actually excited about the writing here, because it's about Maximus essentially getting to the end of the story but having to be laid to rest more than it being about the capitulation of the finale.
Because he needs to see his family again, right? And that's what he ends up getting.
Sure.
You know.
Can we touch upon some of Legend of Korra's final battles? So I would say, in a lot of ways, Legend of Korra's final battles are not as good as some of the middling battles. I think the best confrontation in Legend of Korra, and in my opinion, is Tenzin protecting his family.
Oh my god.
And that's not really one where they were willing to actually pull out all the stops. And that, you could feel it when the episode ended. But I would say, if you wanted to go for the simple execution but being set up perfectly well,
because it's an execution at that point, like,
yes, that's a really good one. But I actually think the best, it's not even a final battle, but it's more of a character arc final battle, is Tarlok and Korra in season 1. That's probably the best execution of that. It's built up really well. It's foreshadowed. The opposing forces' motivations are handled brilliantly. The stakes are legitimate beyond the will someone live or die?
Uh-huh.
There's bigger stakes than that going on there. And then the actual actions of our protagonist and antagonist lead to them both making mistakes that create more dramatic consequences for the fight. So I don't know. I don't really want to talk too much about Legend of Korra's final battles and stuff like that. They're just kind of sometimes.
Oh yeah, Deku versus Overhaul was really good. Yeah. Like it's not Deku's final battle, but it is like
it felt like the final battle to free Eri.
Right, but even then it's not truly the final battle
to free Eri, right?
Yeah. So it's like it's an amazing battle. I don't know if it would be a final battle.
Yeah, but even then I actually wouldn't even really want to like I really want to bring up MHA as far as like making the best kind of final battles in my preference there, because MHA for me is all about being a hero, and I think like in some ways the shonen battle stuff that
can get in the way sometimes.
It can feel almost like it's really good, but it's about the reasons why they're fighting that are far more interesting than the fights themselves. So I guess it kind of works then, but again, also MHA has a little bit of an arc structure that I feel like
keeps things from being final battles. Usually
keeps things from being final battles.
Like maybe One for All versus All for One. That's the maybe the closest equivalent, because it's All Might's final battle. You know.
Yeah. Mirio versus Overhaul has some good elements there. They are set up entirely to oppose each other.
The still frame aspect of it, though, was
well, hey, Rop made it awesome.
He did.
Rop made it awesome. Yep. Shout out to Rop, the Mad Lad editor, making questionable decisions with regards to MHA just look amazing.
Yep.
Mob Psycho, I don't think any of Mob Psycho's fights were full-on final battles, but I think that you could definitely use it for the ending of season 1 specifically, because of how much it was about him finally letting others help him and having that 100% just gifted to Reagan there. That was really good. Yeah.
Luffy versus Arlong, that was great. Yeah, not Luffy's final fight, but that there was something ending there.
That's true. That's a good one.
So the Kizu Monogatari finale. So it is a final fight.
Okay.
And yet I feel like so in a weird way, because they're both vampires, right? The fight has almost no consequence whatsoever, right? It is absolutely spectacular to watch, and it's wonderful, but they're two immortals locked in an epic battle until Judgment Day and trumpets sound, right? Like,
or until one of them forgets about the sun next morning, you know?
Right, exactly. Or one of them surrenders, right? But because of the nature of the actual real battle in Kizu, right? Which is what Araragi and Shinobu are both on.
Yeah.
From that front, beginning with the whole conversation with Hanakawa and everything at the beginning, to the final battle, Araragi deciding to actually go and face Shinobu, and then the way it's resolved, amazing, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, again, it feels though like, it still doesn't kind of fulfill our list entirely with regards to this. So it's a good one, but yeah. If we had finished Ippo at this point, which we, anyway.
I mean,
Ippo versus Sendo second fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Midget War of Wrath? No, too rushed? Oh my god. Oh man. I think that's actually about it for the podcast, y'all. But this was a really good discussion here. I think that one of the things we can all really appreciate about final battles in general is it is really satisfying watching a character arc resolve.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not you were into a specific aspect of the animation or the visuals or the dialogue or the music or any kind of presentation of the fight, usually a final battle resolves at least one character's arc with regards to their story. And a lot of the ones we mentioned here and a lot of the ones you guys have mentioned here have that in some capacity. And anime, I think, just gets that. There's a lot of tropey things that anime specifically does.
Sure.
Like, oh, sudden backstory in the middle of the fight. We're like, the fight's almost over then.
Yep.
We gotta
get the chopping block ready.
Get the chopping block. Someone's either gonna die or someone's gonna get Nakama'd into the protagonist squad, you know?
Or there's gonna be a metaphorical death, of some kind,
Yeah, exactly. So I really love the way anime does final battles, but I think it was important that we mentioned a couple of the other ones in here that do the aspect of the final conflict outside of the
actual
specific
battle.
anime type of thing. Mm-hmm. And thank you all for hanging out here. This was a lot of fun.
It was indeed.
Mm-hmm. So podcast is on Mondays as usual, but for those of you that are just here for the first time, we do One Piece manga read-throughs on Tuesdays. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time. You want to do your social distancing with us and,
there you go.
Listen to us go through One Piece with ridiculous voices and really just hammed up performances. It's a lot of fun. 3 p.m. Pacific time for that. Check that out tomorrow. We're also doing gaming streams on Thursdays and Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Jacob's doing his games on Thursdays. And
Yakuza Zero.
Yakuza Zero.
Yep, I'm wrapping up some loose ends and final battles with real estate and and Cabaret Club management.
Yes. And then on Friday, I will be doing Bastion. I'm going through the games by the indie developer Supergiant. A lot of fun. Very atmospheric and quirky and kind of like introspective, making me think. It's really cool games there. But the One Piece streams are literally the best thing happening right now. They're pretty legit. I'm having a lot of fun.
Glad you like them so much.
Yeah, I'm glad
we are having a ton of fun with them too. So and if you want some other pretty crazy final battles that go on the battle side but also the emotional conflict side, I wrote a sci-fi novel called Battle Lines that's really awesome, and it's on Amazon. If you need some entertainment while you're in quarantine and all that stuff, go check it out. It's pretty cool. Link in chat. It went up a bit.
Exclamation
mark BL. Yep. That'll get you the link. But yeah, there are a few final battles and Battle Lines. Oh
yes. That's
true.
Yep.
My personal favorite involves dancing. But yeah.
yes, that one is quite good. So if you want to leave a follow to stay up to date with all of our streams, please do that. And if you want to give us some of Bezos's money, I hear that there's this thing called Twitch Prime, where you can get access to our private Discord by syncing your Discord and Twitch accounts up. You also get a cool little magnet, which you see on the bunch of people that are here in chat. So check that out, and we'll see you in the next one. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.
Oh.
All right. Mars bars. Sorry, not sorry. Freaky Amaju.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah. It's funny because, I really appreciated your review, Amaju. It was a pretty, full kind of extensive one there, but it was funny because it made me want to go and reread a specific chapter.
Oh,
and
the one with the walk.
Yes.
Carry on, my wayward son.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
a lot of fun. Some good stuff. But
we talked about a lot of battles this podcast.
A lot of good ones. But not anything as good though as the final battle though in Battle Lines.
Definitely not.
Obviously.
I mean,
the battle lines are so thick in that one.